I'd like to welcome everybody to the regular meeting of the Abington School Committee on Tuesday, February 26, 2019, at 7 p.m. here in the Abington Middle High School Library. I'd like to ask anybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Start off hearing of visitors. Would anybody like to address the committee about anything on the agenda? All right. Next, I'll ask the committee to read and approve the minutes from our January 22nd meeting. And when anybody feels ready, feel free to make a motion.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay. Up next, principal report. Mr. Jonathan Hawes from the Woodsdale Elementary School.
You're on, Joanne. All good.
You got it?
Yes, I have it. So I wanted to spend some time talking to you guys this evening about the balanced literacy approach at the Woodsdale School. As you know, we underwent a new reading program adoption in the beginning of last school year, and with that adoption came an instructional shift as well. And throughout the school year last year, the only way for us to really live that instructional shift was to just recognize what we looked at each day, think about how it felt for us. We learned a lot, we had to play a lot, because there really is a big shift between the traditional approach to reading instruction and the balanced literacy approach. I'm going to get into some of the key elements of that in a little bit. But what we really took a look at the end of the year last year was how everything felt over the course of the year, what worked well for us, what we wanted to change. And we came into the 2018-2019 school year with a pretty clear focus. I have to say that that clear focus, without a doubt, was shaped by my two guests here this evening, my two reading specialists, Andrea Doyen and Megan Boudreau. So working with them at the end of the year last year, they really helped me understand where we needed to be this year, where I needed to push a little bit. The elements that we took a look at and played with last year were all mechanics. Lesson structure, grouping size, the way in which we read to students, the way in which we asked students to read to us. So this year it was time to really push. It was time to add some new layers, having already lived and worked through those mechanics. So a couple of those big layers were extending the approach not just to reading, but to writing, to providing feedback from our teachers, to take a look at the resources that we needed. That was something that we were kind of learning on the fly as we went last year. We needed a ton of resources to shift the way in which we teach. Every single student in our school has a book binder that they carry around. They go into our reading room, they go book shopping with their book binders. Every single student has a conferencing binder. Every single student has a reading binder. So we have thousands and thousands of sticky notes that we've burned through this year. So there was just a lot of things that we needed to learn last year and a lot of things that we knew this year coming out of the gate on September 1st we'd be ready. One of the things that I love about the balanced literacy approach, or just the way in which our team has responded to a new approach for reading, is that when you're walking through our school, this is pretty representative of what you'll see. There are kids tucked in every corner of our classrooms with text in front of them or with their own writing in front of them. And that's a shift from sitting in class where everyone, something I can remember when I was in school, everyone's on the same page, everyone's reading the same story. It's totally different. So we've got a couple of kids that are working through some peer editing. My man Christian there is tucked into that beanbag, as he always is. It's really great to see our kids interacting with text often. We've also really tried to push our students to compose their writing, to read online, to share. So our reading approach doesn't just extend to books. We've really tried to put a big technology push in as well. these key components to a balanced literacy program, I would say the things that we focused on, again, with the help of my reading specialist this year with our team members, was strategy delivery, modeling reading, really asking kids to read to one another, listen to other people reading, watching how our teachers are reading, and independent application. The independent application is something I'm going to refer to in a couple of slides, and it's really, really important. But one of the things that I want to see when I'm coming through the classrooms are our kids interacting with those texts. And one of the great experiences about it is that you could have 25 students in a classroom, and each of them is working with 25, there'd be 25 different books in front of them. They're all applying the same skill. And that was something that it took a lot for all of our classroom teachers to represent that we're just actually working on skills. We're not necessarily working all in the same book. So it took a lot. One of those key components, again, was strategy delivery. And we are becoming teachers that are focused on strategies. Really teaching the kids how to read, and not just, are your answers correct? Are your answers incorrect? We're diving deep, giving them all of that toolkit so that when it's time for independent practice, they can execute that. So just a couple of samples of these anchor charts that you see in each one of our classrooms. They're there, they're bright, they're able to, our students are able to take a look at them as a resource when they're working on their reading or their writing. I mentioned a second ago the independent application, and I made a joke about the thousands of sticky notes that we are using, but it really is a lot. In that picture, you see a student practicing the skill of visualization. So the day's focus was to visualize what you're thinking about, your sensory details as you're reading. What are these words making you think? What are they having you visualize inside your head? And what the students are doing is they're jotting down right in the moment what they're feeling, what they're thinking on these sticky notes. They're taking these sticky notes and bringing them into their reading conferences, or they're conferring with each other and having conversations about, well, what did you visualize in your story versus what I visualized in mine? We have switched a lot of our instruction to mini lessons about these skills. So instead of a 45-minute class that's all on the same topic, we're doing short burst mini lessons that are skill specific. We're asking them to work with our classroom teachers in smaller groups, build up those skills before we send them out. So some examples of skill lessons that I've seen. Don't skip it. What ways in which text features help us when we're reading? So really paying attention to captions, paying attention to sidebars, paying attention to the maps on the page. Another mini lesson was only all about how you can show us what the characters in your story have felt. Another one is, after we've all read together, how do we go back and gather up all the facts about what we just read and give them in an organized way? I have an example, just a short 2.5-minute clip of one of our mini lessons. Thank you, Andrea.
Because we're going to think of some effects
So
on
this is Casey Whitman, this is one of our third grade teachers. She's working with just 3 students about cause and effect and how these have influenced characters.
Affecting him on his way to school, or something that he's already thinking about or wondering about on his way to school. Ella? So an effect on Harry, we're actually going to call this an influence, is his birthday party. And how is his birthday party affecting him on his way to school? How is it affecting him as a character on his way to school? So like, how is it making him feel? Amelia? So he's excited, he can't wait. Good. So this is an influence on our character Harry, but it's also an details from the story and said he can't wait because it says it exactly in the story like that. Awesome. Let's go to page 4. Alrighty. Can someone read just the top paragraphs on page 4? Mia?
At school, Harry went on thinking about his program. Hardly had heard a word of what local teachers. Harry, having been listening, accidentally said, "What can you tell me about the car?"
Good. So, our influence is his birthday party, and he can't wait. How is this affecting the rest of his day? Now, how is this affecting his school day? Mia? It's making him daydream. So, Amelia, yesterday in our reading conference, remember how I asked you about your book and if it was problem, solution, or cause and effect? So see how for cause and effect it's all these little tiny things that are affecting our characters that make it cause and effect? Because we kind of talked about that in our conference yesterday. So let's keep going. Can you guys read the second 2 paragraphs? Can someone read those paragraphs? And we'll see if there's anything else that's affecting Harry or another way his birthday is affecting him. Ella?
Awesome. So, as you saw in that mini lesson clip, there's only 3 students that are working at that table. It's really intimate. They all have the same text because they're just building up that skill. Can you find cause? Do you understand those influences? Now go out, and you could hear the buzz in the classroom. Now go out and take a look at cause and effect in your own specific personal text. A text that's on your reading level, a text that is interesting to you, one that you've chosen. So those mini lessons are really driving, instead of one whole group 25 student lesson, we're making these mini lessons into real small, intimate chunks. Another big layer for us was the student conferencing that we've put into place this year. Due to a ton of coaching from my 2 reading specialists, getting our teachers to understand what do you need to do in those conferences. So every single one of our classroom teachers is meeting with their students once a week, some as many as 2 times a week, one-on-one, as you can see in the pictures, to specifically talk about what are you reading in your own independent reading book. And in those conferences, sometimes it's a check on skills, sometimes it's a check on something that's overarching, and sometimes it's really just interest-based. Tell me what you're reading, tell me what you like about it. So I have some examples of the questions that I overheard watching some of these student conferences. What makes you know it's fiction? Tell me about the plot of the story. What types of personal connections did you have to the character of that story? So this last piece about the building a culture, this connects to the school improvement plan. We actually have a key action in our school improvement plan that specifically states we wanted to build a culture of reading at the Woodsdale School. Those 2 guys, Andrea Dorney, Megan Boudreau, are a huge, huge, huge part of all of these culture pieces. They have brought in for us authors to our school. They have connected with authors over Twitter. We have had classroom Skype sessions where we're talking with some of these authors. Here's a picture of 2 of our Skype sessions. So on the left is Susan Tran, on the right is Elena K. Arnold. The person that we were Skyping with on the right, Elena K. Arnold, is the author of A Boy Called Bat, and that was our global read aloud choice for this year. That's another culture piece where every single classroom, every single kid read the book, A Boy Called Bat. We talked about it in our morning meetings, we talked about it in our assemblies. We had a lot of connections to that. We've had genres of the month. The Friday before vacation in the top left, there's a bunch of us goofing around, surprising our students, dressing up as fantasy characters because the genre of the month for February was fantasy. Got a picture there also of our hallway lending library. All along the first floor, there's, I don't know, about, we've got about 50 feet of library space right in the hallways. It's really great. More of these cultural pieces, again, the global read aloud participation, just getting our libraries, our classroom libraries set up, our students go down to the reading room every single day. It's a mad rush after morning announcements to either check their books back in, to pick out new books. We have some kids who would probably just live in that reading room all day. But it's great because they're interacting with our reading specialists. They're having an opportunity to talk about the books. Some kids are coming in with armloads, and some are just working on just one at a time. Again, the picture on the left here is our third graders taking a book review instead of just doing a pen to paper book review, working with their classroom teachers, working on strategies of how to pull out interesting pieces of theme and main idea from a text, and taking that book review and turning it into an online blog post where our kids are having video conversations with you about how they felt about that book, and again, the connections that they made to the characters. A lot of this has been really collaborative. It puts a lot of our kids talking about reading, talking about what they're reading, talking about the connections. In the student conferencing, our staff is talking to the kids. Our reading specialists are talking to the kids about what they're reading. So all of this really, truly has, we're only at the midpoint of this year, but there's been a massive impact. I know for sure our kids have a deeper connection to what they're reading. We have seen the evidence either anecdotally or in conversations or just what they're putting down on paper. I know our kids are connected to what they're reading. Our teachers and students are conferring about what they read, how they felt when they were reading, the personal connections they've got to either text or the experiences that they're bringing from their life and saying, I can relate to this character. There are personalized reading experiences. Our reading specialists and our classroom teachers have gotten really good at finding out what types of books our kids like to read. If you're really interested in a book, it's a lot easier to make connections to it, a lot easier to really just dive into it. The accountability and the independent application that our students are doing, they're sitting with those teachers in about 15, 20 minutes, they're taking a skill, and they're not being hand over hand. Our teachers aren't leading with their questioning. They're saying, you go do, and then come back and show me what you have with it. And the last impact for sure is culture. We've seen it throughout our school. We know our kids are pumped, and our reading specialists have done a really, really good job coaching up our teachers about how to, it's not easy to get all of our teachers talking about reading every single day, getting them dressed up in costumes, getting them to switch gears and look at a different genre every single month. So it's really, really been an exciting thing. We know that the approach is different, but it really is working.
Great.
Major, major, major credit. Again, Andrea Dornan and Megan Boudreau, my two fantastic reading specialists. I can't tell you enough how much work they're doing not only with our kids, they're in common planning time meetings, they're coaching our teachers up, doing parallel teaching. So they're in the classroom working with the classroom teacher, either finishing each other's sentences or teaching one portion of the lesson and moving on to the next. They're taking small groups, they're analyzing our student progress with data, and making sure that our students have texts that are on their readability. They're pushing me to get into classrooms and say, we need a little bit more from this, and they're doing a really great job. I'm very proud of them.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for the presentation. Does anybody have any questions for Jonathan?
I do.
Go ahead, Wendy.
Hi, how are you?
Great.
Thank you for the presentation, and I think a lot of this is really great, but I do have questions
Sure.
regarding, this started really this year, right?
No.
Well, and last year it started, but you really got into it this year. And where are you pulling, what other districts are doing this?
We took a look. Where did we go locally last year? I know that
We went to visit Plymouth. We have a
Bridgewater. Bridgewater,
Yeah.
Marshfield.
We used the same curriculum we used last week.
Yeah.
So Marshfield and Plymouth are doing it?
Yeah.
Hanover.
Hanover. Thank you.
Lots. I can't find a lot of places that aren't doing it, but
In what grades? Like, is it just elementary or is it all grades?
All grades.
we've adopted K to 8.
12.
Yeah, but you can do it with any curriculum. It's more of a framework. The balanced literacy is just a skeleton for how to organize your day.
Right.
I was thinking, not that I want to hijack what you were saying here, but go finish, and then I was going to just I have a comment as well.
Well, I was just wondering how, so in kindergarten through second, they're doing something completely different, and then third and fourth, you guys are doing this, and then it doesn't transfer over to fifth grade, does
This
it?
approach is happening at the Beaver Brook School.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay, so what about in 5th and above? Does that?
So we've had the 5th grade team to come from the middle school, come and observe at the Woodsdale School. They've worked with Sherry, they've worked with our reading specialists. It's a little bit of a shift for them, but they're basically where we're at with our integration about a year ago.
Okay. And all the teachers satisfied and happy with it?
Yeah, our
Okay.
crews loved it. I mean, it really was. It was a labor to really truly shift the way in which just even the release. Naturally, as a classroom teacher, you're wanting to make sure that all of the students know that answer, so they're all working on the same text. But to have them switch that, to have 25 different books and really get to the same question was difficult. The way in which we're assessing is different. We're tracking our students' skills instead of just averages like 79. So it's been a full-scale shift for sure.
So that was my next question. So what about like spelling and comprehension, and that still is occurring, right?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
We're heavy on the comprehension. Another layer that, it was one of my bullet points, but I definitely forgot to talk about it a little bit more, is the phonics instruction that's happening, the way in which letters sound and make, the words that we're reading. We're bringing phonics still to 4th graders. We're heavy on that. And traditionally, that might have been something that only was delivered through special education services, Fort Gillingham services. Every single kid is getting phonics instruction as well.
So do you still do spelling tests?
Yeah, sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. They're really story specific, and it's not so much like the spelling test on Friday morning,
Right.
1 through 20. It's a little bit different.
So how much time is spent on English or on the reading?
We set up our literacy blocks to be 90 minutes.
90 minutes? And then you still do spelling and comprehension and everything within English on top of it, and then math, science.
Yeah,
That
we're
is
also-
in there in a day?
Yeah, and we're
Okay.
also really getting good at taking our vocabulary, just anywhere vocabulary, mathematics vocabulary, science vocabulary, social studies vocabulary, and using our skills that we know to how to read a social studies text, find the words around it. It's the same skill that we're using in reading.
Well, that's good.
And a lot of those conversations,
Yeah, no, jump in,
a lot
please.
of the conversations, a lot of the comprehension and spelling, it's done in that one-on-one conferencing time. So something that would have been delivered lecture style to 25 kids is now being done, like you see at the back table, one-on-one with the kids. It's extremely personalized and differentiated to the kid, because you're having those 6, 7, 8-minute conversations with them and tailoring the lesson right there to them. So a lot of those things are more individualized than I think we ever were before.
So what happens with the other kids so the teacher's sitting in the back of the room, she's taking one student at a time. What are the other kids doing during that time? I'm sure they're reading, but
Yeah, so they're doing some of their skills applications, they're writing, they're journaling. Each one of our kids writes a letter every single week to their teacher about what they're reading. So we've got any number of tasks in our classroom. As you saw in that video, there's like a buzz going on in the classroom as there's three students working with that teacher. So in that room, if I remember from that video, there were students who were partnered up on the rug, sharing each other's writing. There were students who were just diving into their books, doing their independent reading. There were some students that were working on something skill specific that Casey had set up, like a small group activity or something like that.
Interesting.
It's a big, it really is. It's been, there are, in our classrooms, there are as many as 4 or 5 different activities going on.
And it's different from, like, each teacher runs it different. Some teachers, when they do their conferences, all the kids are just reading. Some teachers have different activities going at the same time. It depends on the teacher. It's really fun to watch.
So I can tell you from doing numerous walkthroughs too, that a lot of it's about established routines. So the students already know what the routine's going to be. So it doesn't take a lot of instruction. It's not like, okay, stop. Over here, you 3 students are going to do this. And you 4 students, 1, 2, 3, 4, are going to do this, and let me explain it to you. And the whole room waits for everybody to get an assignment about what they're going to do. Because
That's what I was wondering.
the teacher has these established routines around these stations, and the kids just know. And so it happens, it's not completely seamless, but it's pretty quick, it's pretty seamless.
Oh, that's good.
In terms of
That was a
transitions.
concern.
I came at the beginning of the year when parents were invited to observe to 5th grade, and that is exactly what was happening in the classroom. There was, I think she counted off by 4s, and those were the groups, and they rotated, and I think she would set her timer for 12 minutes or 15 minutes, and they knew what each group was, and some groups had an adult and some groups didn't. I didn't have anything to do but watch, and they were all engaged. You know, there was something in each group, and looked like it went off without a hitch that day, and that was the beginning of the year. They hadn't had, you know, not much practice yet.
That was really good.
I just want to say I have a 4th grader at Woodsdale, and he is really excited about reading now, and I don't know that he ever really had that appreciation for reading as he does, especially this year. He's excited. He comes home, he tells me about the books he gets to pick, and I think them having that ability to pick their own book is like a huge thing. They kind of feel like independent and like big shot, like you pick your own book. It's really cool. It's what he likes. It's his interest. So it's just so nice to see like such excitement about reading, and even like the, you know, the RAD program, like the half day, like wearing the shirt, like that's so cool, like that they can do that. Like they really like that. It's just so nice that he's so excited about reading, because I think that's a tough thing to really get kids engaged in reading and want to read and what they like to read. So I think it's awesome.
That's one of yours, Meg, 4th grade.
And you haven't.
I really get upset if something gets in the way and that time gets taken away.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I can even second. I mean, I have a third grader, and same thing. Like the fact that he can pick what he wants to read is is so much different than being forced to read anything. You know what I mean? I mean, I can even imagine myself.
Teachers feel like they know their kids better than ever through this. Like we've heard the teachers buzzing, and they're like, who were like pretty hesitant, and now they're like, this is incredible. Like we know our students better than we've ever known them, because it's just personalized. And,
Oh, I just wanted to gush. Is it my turn?
Go ahead.
You too. No, I feel like Mr. Haas did a lot of gushing about you, but I just thank you. Thank you so much for the work that you've done, because I know it was only a few slides, but you present it as though this were easy. And I know that it wasn't. Like, I know from doing that work myself, I think back to 15 years ago when I would say, everybody open up Boomtown, it's Unit 1, Story 1, and the vocabulary word that I'm gonna teach you today is oxen, because the book tells me to do that. Like, those poor kids, I don't know where they are now, but I don't think they ever needed that word oxen that I made sure I taught. And so when I look at what I've learned, and we just visited Framingham, who's been doing this model for 7 years, and I was in a 1st grade classroom, and some of you have heard this story, but I just have to tell it because it's where you're gonna end up, and it's such a powerful place to be. But I was in a little 1st grade classroom. The student had chosen to read If You Give a Mouse a Cookie, and the skill was to think about how a character feels. So I was just a guest trying to be nice, and I said, like, how does your character feel? And so the little boy, before he answered me, rubbed the words on the page and said, well, you know, and I'm a stranger. He said, well, you know, the author never tells you in the words. Like, he's not gonna just say it, how the character feels. So you have to do some work. And I was like, wow. So he's like, so I know how the character's feeling because X, Y, Z. And I just thought, this is 7 years old. What amazing things that can be accomplished when people embrace and believe that this type of model is really beneficial to kids. So that was my gush. Thank you guys. Thanks.
Thank you for
Thank
answering
you,
those
Jen.
questions. I really appreciate it. And I just
Thank
want
you
to
all.
say that meeting the authors and Skyping and the hallway with the library and everything, that's really awesome. So great work.
Thanks, guys.
And thanks for answering those questions, because you know, it's just different.
It
So
really
not
is.
everybody knows about it. So
It totally is. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
great job, ladies.
It's okay. No problem.
I hope it's
Just moving on, some unfinished business. What we started before a month ago, but at our last meeting in January, we put out there a draft of the Superintendent Schaefer's goals. Tonight we have a finished product after some feedback. If anybody wants to look through them, if you haven't already, finish up what may be new on there. And I'd be looking for a potential motion to accept the Superintendent of Schools 2019 goals as presented in this packet.
the latest discussion that we've had in the last couple of weeks is reflected in the one italics and bolded. The previous changes that we've talked about are not, and the whole thing's new, pretty much, but the most recent one is on page 1, 2, 3, 4 at the bottom.
Thanks.
I'll make a motion to accept the goals as presented. If anybody seconds.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for the time you spent with me on this, and I appreciate it, because it drives the direction that we're going, and I just, I like that input very much. Thank you.
Next up, we have report of subcommittees. A couple months ago, we established a social emotional learning subcommittee. Jackie Avers and Lisa Augusta are the school committee members that are a part of that. We're going to talk about the climate survey. I don't know how you want, if you guys want to kick it off?
Do you want to start talking about?
Would you want to talk about our initial meeting at all?
Sure.
And then just where, okay. So the four of us gathered for our initial, like Chris said, the committee was, subcommittee was established, and then we sort of had our initial meeting to figure out what now and which direction do we want to take. And the highlight really from that first meeting, that was my takeaway, and jump in, but we spent a lot of time thinking about, and it sort of relates to the change in the goals that you saw, that you've kind of pointed out, is coming up with this idea of like, what are our values in the Abington Public Schools in terms of when we think about students over the time that they enter with us, maybe in pre-K, maybe in K, until the time they leave us in 12th grade, what common, and it says it right here, but what common expectations really do we have for how students will be treated, how we'll respond to them, and what we expect to see when you transition up through. And I thought, jump in, but I thought it was a really nice conversation that took us, we do so much talking about teaching and learning, which is the business that we're in, but we kind of connected back and took a breath to these are people in front of us, and I know we've said that before, but and just how do all of the big and small decisions that we make impact the little people who turn into people that leave us and go into the world. We talked a little bit about birth to 5 and just how families are doing all of this, filling them up sort of at home, and then they send them into the public school, and that it's really our job to make sure that we take care in the best way that we can as we transition them through. And so one of the ways, I think, is the surveys that we're going to think about.
So we talked about a lot, and actually ironically, it was Valentine's Day. Talking about social emotional learning on Valentine's Day seemed appropriate for our first meeting. But one of the things I asked the committee members of the members of the subcommittee to consider, because I think we probably could have kept talking for quite a while about all of the things we were working on, was if you remember, the state's been pumping out these questions for our 5th, 8th, and 10th graders about how they feel about school as part of the MCAS test. And the committee has had their reservations about us providing this optional set of questions. And people jump in wherever you want. I can summarize the concern in my mind has been, one, they're already answering enough questions on the MCAS test. We're testing them enough, too much. Why pick this format and this time to ask them how they feel about school? How valid is it anyway? Because they probably feel terribly about school because they've been nothing but bubbling in answer sheets for days. And then the next concern, because that's one more stress on kids that they don't need. The next concern was, when the state collects this information, there's a student identifier that goes with it. And why does the state want all of this individual information, or why do they need all this individual information about our students? It's not anonymous. It's confidential, and there's a difference between that and anonymous. And so, for those reasons, Abington has not provided that optional survey. One of the problems I have, and I've agreed with you, it's actually been the recommendation, but one of the problems with it is we're not getting a temperature check on how our students are feeling about school because we're not participating in that. And that, to me, is a loss, because we want to know how they feel about a number of things. And you've got sample questions in here. And I want to give James Robbins an opportunity to describe how and where this came from, because this also coincides with our coordinated program review and the work we need to do with our coordinated program review. So this survey that we're proposing would go to parents, and there's a copy of that in here. It would go to teachers, see how the teachers are feeling, and it would go to the students. And so these 3 different surveys would satisfy, I think, to a better extent than the state does with its MCAS testing, all of the goals that we would have with that. It's homegrown, it would be, it's anonymous. We would keep the information by grade, so we could see if there was one place in particular that we were more concerned with than another. But it's also confidential. And so I'm not exactly sure how young we would go with this survey. Just the fact that we would do it at the high school, middle school, and then go down into the elementary school means we're already surveying to more of an extent than the state was in the first place. And so that's a little bit of the history behind it, and I want to give and a little bit of the problem with the MCAS, and I want to give James an opportunity, though, to certainly talk about the CPR and the purpose behind this, the dual purpose.
Right, yeah, so as Peter mentioned, this serves to replace the survey that the MCAS had generated that we found imperfect for a number of different reasons. But also, you may remember that I was here in October-ish, and I had mentioned that we have certain responsibilities as a result of our coordinated program review that was conducted last year, and one of which is the state said, hey Abington, we need to see you taking stock of your culture, more specifically, because when they had done their review last year, they found that, all right, there's no concrete way that you are evaluating your culture. So what they advise is that we do an institutional self-evaluation, which is most commonly done through a survey, to just sort of take stock of the accessibility of your programs. And so they use really broad language, but what that means is, do children of minority backgrounds feel that their home cultures are represented in the curriculum? Do parents feel like that that the school is proactively engaging them? Just to what extent are we cultivating a welcoming environment? So that's what DESE wanted to see us evaluate, so we could get some specific data through these surveys. So so these surveys are meant to fulfill that responsibility. But we also know that there are a number of sort of initiatives that we have in the district, including recognizing and responding to bullying, offering direct social emotional instruction, integrating more culturally responsive literature, and just making our classrooms more positive and engaging for students. So those 4 themes really run through each of the surveys. So we'll have some data to say how culturally responsive is our curriculum, or how frequently are we doing direct instruction on social emotional topics. So these surveys will give us just some data on that. So they're meant to just sort of be kind of surface level. We don't dig especially deep, but the idea is that we're kind of drumming up data to say, okay, where should we dig deeper? So that's why the survey is a little, only dedicates a few questions on each of those topics. But I think it's kind of a step forward in terms of measuring some of those things that are traditionally unmeasured, like how students feel and how parents feel.
Okay.
I had a question, a couple of questions actually. Is there a second page to the parent? Because I think the second page is student questions.
Yes, it is. I think there was.
It says my classroom, I'm comfortable my classroom.
I think,
you pointed out?
yeah, I totally did it, yeah. It's the back page.
So I
of
didn't
the
know if there were
parent
more
student
parent questions?
So it's at one page. The student, one of them looked like the
Oh, yeah.
student only had one side to fill
Yeah.
out. And I was wondering if the parent also had one side to fill out, but then maybe some of the student ones accidentally just got listed, because
Copied on the pen, okay.
they present like they would be answered by a student, just.
Yeah, maybe there was a I don't have that in front of me. I could take a look at someone's. It sounds like this could have been a copy.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
could
it's
be.
a copy.
I just wondered, are the parents, is it one, like, is it what, do you feel that it's, these are the questions from parents, or do you remember it being 2 pages?
I would say, like, so one of the thoughts was, let's try to make it really efficient. So I tried to make sure that there were only, you know, a handful of questions. I think it went longer than 1 page.
Okay,
Maybe
so
if you
then-
could read me the last question that's on the first page.
On the front?
James,
You can have it.
Right.
the diversity in the classroom. Classmates seem tolerant. Oh no, my
These are the
child's
same
But that's a parent.
questions as
Yeah, my
the-
child's class.
These two.
Right.
The second page is the parent and the student ones are pretty similar.
They're like the same, yeah.
Yeah.
This one,
It's just the same one.
yeah.
That'll be fixed.
Yeah, this, I mean, for a parent, if I were bullied, no, that's not.
Yeah. So what I can say is this form right here, it says parent, but it is, these are questions for students.
Student, right,
Yep.
so is there another is there another section of parent questions, or no?
Actually, so no, the
Okay.
parent survey is just one.
One page,
One
okay.
page, and just for some reason, the
Yeah.
Yeah,
the
it's
second
fine.
page of students.
Yeah.
Yeah.
is
Looks like
copied.
this is just duplicated.
Yeah, it's just duplicate.
I think
it's
it's
the
just
same one.
duplicated, yeah, I think they just.
How do we anticipate delivering these?
Oh, good question. So that was kind of worked out very recently. Rich Bykowski showed me how to use Constant Contact, which has a nice survey feature. So they'll all be done electronically, and it automatically aggregates the data, so we can look for themes in the responses. So when it comes to students, we'll probably find time during wellness classes for students to participate, and then I anticipate for parents. Links will be made available on the homepage for a period of 2 or 3 weeks. It'll remain active, and they can participate that way. And then convenient time will be fun for staff to fill out theirs. And so this will be done in March. I can't say the specific date at this moment in time, but it has to be, because we have to report our progress on working toward this to the state for the coordinated program review by the end of March. So it's something that we'll just do sooner
Fairly
than later,
quickly.
just to meet that requirement. But yeah.
Is student participation optional?
Yeah, if a student's made uncomfortable, I don't see any value in us really forcing the matter. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get a segment of the population, a big enough segment that's representative, but we don't expect it to be all students. We just feel like, hey, if we can get 100 students from 9th grade reporting on that, that's a good chunk. That's about 80% of the population, so that's pretty good. So if there's any one student that feels uncomfortable, I say it's not worth pressing the issue, and it may, if they're uncomfortable, it may influence their response anyway, so the value would be limited. So students may opt out.
You mentioned 9th grade. Is it all grades, 9th grade, or is 9th grade just an example?
What I would anticipate is, so again, we're trying to get representative segments. We're not trying to get the whole batch, because if we can get representative segments, but what we're saying is, by and large, students at the high school feel this way, without telling all kids. So what I would anticipate is probably 9th and 10th grade, because those are the grades where there are mandatory health and wellness classes.
And then going younger.
Oh yes,
Go-
yeah.
go
Oh yeah, sorry.
deeper, yeah.
That was just focused on the high school, and then I would say a crop from 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. And I think Peter, we had discussed tapping into a little bit of the elementary age too, so probably 4th grade, just because it'd be good to see how concerns travel. And I believe the language is accessible enough to kids, 4th grade enough. Before publishing it online, I'll take a second look at that.
Could it be sent to all parents? Like, would all parents and staff participate, or are you just focusing on, or have the opportunity, or just focusing on those grades, parents and staff?
I would say all staff and parents will have the opportunity, and just the hope is that we get a sizable enough.
Yeah. No,
crew.
gotcha.
And what that number is, not sure off the top of my head, but it would be good. But if we come back in a few months and say, hey, we had 100 parents fill that out, to me that feels like a pretty good deal. But then if it's just 20, that's kind of negligible, So we'll see how it plays out. But what we'll do is we'll keep the links active so that parents will have time to do that, and we'll try to advertise it appropriately.
Yeah.
I have a feeling we'll get really good staff participation, just because they're in-house and easy to communicate with.
The survey's anonymous.
Yes. But they're, for example, for students, we want to know what grade they are. So, so for example, say bullying turns out to be an issue, we'd want to know where that's happening.
So there will be a collection of some demographic information.
So what is, I'm a ninth grade, what grade are you in? Not, you know,
Exactly.
bubble ninth?
What grade are you in?
Yep.
What school are your children in?
Okay.
Like that.
All right.
And then the data will get a little muddy because some parents will have kids in multiple schools. But we're just trying to pull out main themes.
I was absolutely against the climate survey, so to see this and knowing that we have to do something for Desi, I'm very satisfied with how it turned out, and thanks for doing this.
I think it's very, this is every, I don't know about most, but you go to a pediatrician's office, and my pediatrician, your child gets one of these, you know, from the get-go, and before the practitioner comes in, you're reading, you know, now as my children are older, you know, they're doing it themselves, but I remember when they weren't, and I was reading the questions to them, so I think, you know.
I agree.
Right.
They've been trying to get this for a while.
Right. And there's a lot of things that we as staff members probably have opinions on, like how frequently we feel we're integrating diverse cultures in our curriculum. We have feelings about this, but it'd be good to just get some actual data on it so that we can say with a more informed point of view how we're doing in various categories.
I think we talked at our subcommittee maybe though about the community at large from what we've heard, and jump in, just people feel there's a lot of buzz about being asked their opinion and just having an outlet to, there's been different surveys that have gone out for different things, but I feel like we're in this trend right now where we continue to seek feedback and the opinion of the people, and I think that that's just so valuable, and this is just another great way to continue to do that, so thank you.
Oh yeah.
I think it's a great start.
Thank you.
So if you change any of these questions, will this just be presented to us again, whether it's, I don't know if it needs to come to a meeting, but.
You guys can approve it or go with it.
So we weren't necessarily, I was going to ask the committee for a vote if there was any feelings of concern about this, but if we have consensus about it, I wasn't even going to ask you for a vote because everybody,
Yeah, we kind of gave some
we were not
feedback.
required to have a vote on this.
So what if, like next year, you decide to change some of the questions though? Would we at least be notified and just get a copy of it?
Yeah, we can do that. We can make sure.
And I would jump in. So what Desi would like is that each year the school is taking stock of a certain element of its culture. So the idea is that we'll have a survey again next year, but it'll be informed by this data. So we'll see where the recurring concerns are, and then we'll do a deeper dive on those topics. So the survey was on the next year's survey. So no matter what, it should look different next year than this year.
And then we'll just get a copy. And I love that it's anonymous and confidential.
Oh, of course.
And I understand, obviously, you know, the grade needing that. And I think it would be interesting too for the students. Y'all know that I'm not a big fan of surveys, but for the students or to take one maybe in the beginning and towards the end, because I think that things change, you know, and the way when you come into the school is different than when you walk out of it.
Oh yeah.
Time of year would definitely have an impact on this.
I have a question. So is this is like Desi inspired? Like the survey was supposed to be on like the MCAS, but then it wasn't anonymous, and then so you decided to make this survey.
Yeah, that was one of the factors that inspired us to make a survey. So one of it was the bullying survey on MCAS we weren't happy with.
Okay.
A second one is Desi evaluated our district last year and said one thing we'd like Abington to do going forward is to measure how parents and students feel about how accessible the school is. And so the way a lot of schools are doing it is through a survey. So that was kind of the second reason. And then the third reason is just that we're doing a lot of work on bullying and social emotional learning, and we just want to know where we're at right now so that we can make sure our work is targeted. So those are kind of the three reasons.
Okay.
And also, when you looked, when I saw the questions, there was a lot of them that were invasive or, you know, just didn't need to be there.
Okay.
And, you know, there were over 20 questions for some of the grades too, so, and just that this wasn't it was confidential, but it wasn't anonymous. That was, you know, it was all being tied back to, anybody could find out that it was actually you.
Yeah, student number, yeah.
Right.
That makes sense. And so this is like the data collection phase. Is there like a way to like I don't know, like address the problems? Like well, how would that come in from like the people who like Desi, who commented that there's no concrete ideas to like collect the data? Are they gonna also like talk about a way to like fix the problems that the survey's collecting?
Yeah, so that's really up to us as a community. So the idea is Desi says, hey, you need to generate data on these issues because there are problems everywhere. So they're likely to be problems in Abington too. So you're totally right. We're using this tool to generate the data to say, hey, where are we at? You know, where are our main problems? Where are we doing best? Where are we weakest? And then we'll know that as a community. And then so it's kind of up to us, you know, as the school leaders to decide how we're going to address it. Everything in so many organizations, data analysis is so important, and that's true of education too. So we're using this to get the data so that we can then say, what are our priorities and how are we going to get there? And what are our priorities? How are we going to get there? That's for all of us to decide. So that'll be a conversation going forward. But something that I'm sure will probably happen is that after we get all this data, it'll be reported out to all of you what the results are. So you'll be able to see the themes and contribute to the conversation.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Jackie and Lisa, for your time on it as well. Thanks, James. Moving on, report of the superintendent of schools.
So the process, there's an enclosure in your packet for the selection of the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment. And tonight I wanted to introduce to you somebody that you already know. The committee, I want to thank the committee. We wrote them thank you notes for their service. I want to thank the committee of people that worked with us publicly. And I also want to introduce to you Dr. Sherry Fedorowicz, the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment.
Congratulations.
Do you want to mind sharing a few words of curriculum instruction and assessment with us?
Sure.
Thank you.
First of all, I just want to say thank you. I'm very grateful and very honored to be standing here. The decision of the committee and the district and the community, it is such a great honor, and it's a responsibility that I don't take lightly. I have a lot of pride in this job, and I think a lot of people in this district do as well. So it's going to be a continuation of the devoted time and effort and the hard work putting into what we're already doing and also making improvements as we go forward. And I also want to acknowledge that we have a great team. It's a great team of educators, administrators, and community that we work with to make all the efforts to move forward. In terms of a vision going forward, I think my number one vision is to promote student engagement. That is basically challenging and rigorous, exciting and fun, but also be able to provide that in a socially and emotionally safe environment. And the way we would do this is to increase the capacity of our instruction and pedagogical practices, best practices within the district. And the outcome is basically to be able to service all students, get them education that they need, support, improve, and also achieve academic success for them as well. So I know we still have room to grow. We need areas of improvement that we're working on and continuously working on, and I look forward to the challenge. And I also look forward to working with the team moving forward. We've got a lot of great things going on, like technology. We've got Readers Workshop going on. We're going to be visiting districts. We've got our learning walkthroughs within the district, because we've got a lot of really great practices going on that I think teachers can see. and it helps us to inform our process for next year and as we move forward. Looking at vertical alignment, we've got the new social studies standards. I'm working very closely with James Robbins, looking at co-teaching and social emotional inclusive practices, and also PD opportunities. So I just wanted to say thank you, and also thank you because it's you've also had an impact on me, which I am grateful for as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations again.
Thank you. Congrats.
So the next item I have for you, and this is a first read. If people feel comfortable voting on it, they can. If you want to wait till next time, we can certainly do that, and I can answer questions tonight or before our next meeting. This is really about accountability. We added an instructional media technologist to this department, and it's a person who needs to be supervised and evaluated, and the director of technology would be accountable for that evaluation process. And so that's why this is here, to make sure that we appropriately document and have accountability for that. And as we thought about that and how that looks, and we checked with other job descriptions from other districts for similar positions, we added the piece about the licensure, the integration of technology. You can see that it's bold and in it's bold print. Rich has been overseeing the security. We added that because he's been doing that piece. And then the instructional related responsibilities are increased. And that's, again, really about that additional position, the instructional media technologist. And then we added the independent study course for students because he's been doing that. He's been evaluating the software packages. But you can see them all. You can see them all here.
And this is just to basically change Rich's, like that position's job description, but it's remaining.
Correct.
Rich, yeah.
Correct.
Okay,
It's just
that was
adding.
what I was gonna ask.
Yeah, it's adding.
Okay.
It's adding responsibility. And when we added the person to the department, it caused us to take another look at this. So that was the impetus, and that's the majority of what you see here.
Okay.
But there are, as I noted, there are other minor tweaks when we went to look, when we looked at other districts and we looked at what he was doing. We want to make sure we captured it accurately.
I don't know if the committee would want to make a motion on it tonight or table it or.
I'll make the motion if everyone's comfortable with it.
Okay. I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Another item that I don't need a vote on, that I want to just show you is a draft of next year's school calendar. And it's amazing the amount of time we spend on these. It's almost going to be next year, and we've spent the year thinking about next year already. It's not even here. So this calendar that you have, I'll just give you an overview of it, is really mirrors the opening we had this year with the 2 days. Of note on this is that kindergarten starts the following week. Otherwise, they'd be in for a day, and let's face it, they're 5 years old, in for a day and then have a long weekend doesn't make sense. It's better to have them start the next week. And then also in terms of transportation and the buses running, it's better because a lot of people, it's a good thing, take pictures of their kids when they get on buses for the first day of school. All of the kindergarten parents do it. So the transportation system slows to a crawl. And that's fine, that's a good thing. As long as they don't do it for 180 days, we're fine. The other things I want to note here are we put the March 3rd half day for staff and no students, or we put the half day for staff and no school for students on March 3rd because that's the date of the primary. And we're hoping that the town is moving the election to Arnold Hall. Emerald Hall.
Where's that?
Arnold Hall is a place behind my house, just so you know. So it's Emerald Hall, and it seems to me more conducive for an election, but if the town wants to have it in a new school building, I certainly understand and respect that. But just in anticipation of that, we put that there because there's no way we could have school that day. And we already have that half-day for staff in the pilot that we've been considering with the association around the calendar, because staff don't come back the day after the students leave for the summer, where they have previously. That's that day. So if any of that's making sense to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I guess we'd be looking what, March, is the idea to try to approve it in March so we can get it out there? Or, I'm trying to think in the past, I can't remember when we
could go later if we had to. I think it's healthy.
By April.
Yeah, it's
I'd
healthy
like
to get it out
so
there.
if anybody had, I mean, it's out there now as a public package too, if anybody has feedback or whatever, we can try to do.
Can I just ask a question about this? We had talked, and I know you don't list the parent conferences on here.
Yep.
But we had talked at one point, and I know we can't add an additional day of parent conferences because that has to do with bargaining. But we as a district only have that one conference time, and the fact that it occurs in October, typically, is not the best time. I wish we could push it longer so that the staff had more time to get to know students, and that families get, if they only get the one time to come into school to have a conference, that maybe half of the year has gone by, or some greater length of time between September and June.
So I remember talking about this, and when I went back and further discussions about it in follow-up, the conferences are timed with the first progress report or the first interim grading period. So the open houses happen early, and then the conferences are all over the place because we've got some schools that are on trimesters, some schools that are on quarters, and they coincide with those initial progress report times.
Yeah, I think the conference could be something separate than the report cards and progress reports. Like, those are going to come out whenever they come out, and maybe uprooting that system is too messy. So, but then the conference is really about the chance for the parent and the teacher to talk about the child, not necessarily the progress report or the report card. And I think we're doing a disservice by having it occur. Every conference I've been to, I almost feel uncomfortable on the teacher's behalf as a teacher that there hasn't been enough time for them to really have meet to share it. So I would prefer, both as a parent and looking at it from the educator perspective, to just have more time to get to know the students and then have a face-to-face. But that might require just saying, if we do go with a shift, we may have to shift the mindset too, that this is just about a face-to-face time with families, and it's not necessarily about the progress report or about the report card, because that might not align. Does that make sense?
So pushing it back, how far are you thinking? Pushing it back? You
What
said
do you
January.
guys think?
I think January.
I do too. I think it needs.
I mean, I brought up to you, I brought up before, they're also all over they're all different.
Right.
I mean, I don't have a high school jam,
There are
but
two.
yeah.
I mean, but that's because they're based on grading
Right.
frames, and we've got trimesters, we've got.
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
Unless we come in alignment with that.
Yeah.
then, I mean, those don't even correlate, so if we're not using that, then you could have them similar
Yeah.
timeframes.
I mean, that's not a calendar issue either. That's more.
So do you feel that, and this is me thinking out loud with the committee.
Yeah.
So do you feel that our families would somehow feel as though they wanted to know more about some of those, talk more specifically about some of those grades, and some of the families would feel as though they're missing something in terms of the conversation because it was pushed back so far?
I can't speak to every teacher. I can only speak to the teacher my kids have had, and my wife or I've never had an issue with sending an email though and getting a response or even getting a phone call back. I mean, I'm speaking very highly of the staff that we have, the teachers that we have here. Even the parent-teacher conferences are usually 10, 15 minutes anyway. I mean, you can usually get more out in a back and forth email, and even it doesn't have to be immediate. That's my experience anyway. I mean, I'm not saying everybody's had the same experience, but that's mine, where if I had the question, I think I could get it answered anyway.
And I like the idea of the conference not being about, the report card just came, so now we're gonna talk about
Just
this.
that. Yeah.
But if we're shifting our thinking in terms of even just like the social emotional lens, that it's just like a sit down to say, can you talk to me not just about this, the progress report or the report card, but talk to me
Yeah.
about him, talk to me about her, talk to me about the grades. I know the report card's coming, or it's just happened a couple months ago, but what else? Let's have a talk about the child. I don't know, I think it might eliminate how the conversation gets focused.
And we've got, I appreciate the feedback and the input. We've got time, and like you said, it's not part of this calendar.
Does it take one of the half days?
No.
How does it work?
Those,
It's not-
those schools have individual half-days when they do it.
Each school has a half day when they have a
Yeah, it's not
conference.
part of this.
If someone were struggling and they wanted to talk about those grades and they wanted to have it early in the year, they didn't want to wait till January because they would feel they would just, you're saying they'd come in earlier.
I mean, I may think January's a little, I mean, for, you know, is there a halfway middle mark for parent leaves? I mean, I've always thought October was early, but I can see some parents really struggling with January, like half the year's gone by, and not so much academically, but, and as your children age, it's really, I think it becomes less about the academics because you really know that. It's more about what you're talking about.
But I think to Chris's point, if it happens December, January, and I want to have a sit down, if I feel strongly enough that I need to meet with the child's teacher, I feel like our staff does that anyway. They're doing that anyway. I've had meetings with teachers at a time that's not parent conferences. So
Right.
I think that will probably just continue, that people can reach out, phone, email.
Yeah, I mean, even December, I mean,
December, yeah.
early December, maybe before you hit the holidays.
December's just a
works.
tricky
hard
month.
as-
Yeah, that's why I said you'd have to do it early, but that's, I think that's more a conversation.
I,
A parent opinion?
Sure.
I like them early. It gives me a chance to meet the student, the teacher right away. Learn, October's early, but I want to say that my kids were November this year. I don't remember when Beaverbrook was, but middle school was November, and it allowed me to get in and get a feel for what socially, emotionally, more than educationally was going on. And I'm a parent who is highly involved at all the meetings, engaged with my students' teachers, but not all parents are like that.
No, agreed.
Or are aware that they can be like that. I come from a family of teachers, so I'm aware of everything that goes on. And how much teachers put in outside of the school day. I would not like to see
All right,
move
no,
that late.
I appreciate, I appreciate it. And I think, I mean, I more, and I understand if part of it is having it with the release of a progress report, whatever, I don't know, to me, if that's that big of a deal. If that's that big of a deal, like I was more looking for, when I originally broached the subject, more in unison across the district, where it's not October,
Right.
November, and then I remember the pre-Ks in January.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just,
It's all over the place.
it's all
around
over the
those marking
place. And I
periods.
think, and I don't know what the right answer is necessarily, and I don't want to derail this conversation either, because this isn't something that has to be talked about necessarily right here, but it's just more like an idea of more unison somewhere. I mean, I don't know if
I almost
October's the
think that we
unison
have
answer.
to be really respectful that we do have different ages, and different ages, in different aged students' parents need more at different
Yeah,
times.
yeah.
So having it at different times is really respectful of the children and the families we're serving.
Mhm.
You know, a kindergartner definitely may be okay waiting, second grader or someone on the,
Yeah,
at
yeah.
different times.
Yeah.
So I think saying that we need to streamline it that way is a bit much, because I
Okay.
don't think that really takes into account,
Yeah, I understand.
all the different
Yeah,
populations.
yeah. Okay.
and I agree with Jeanette that I think January, especially when you get to the older grades, is just, it's too late.
Okay.
But I do think that October is too soon.
Yeah.
So, and then
Happy
you have to
medium
worry,
somewhere.
right, and you have to worry
Okay.
about the weather too, then the snow and, people taking the time in December and January.
Okay.
I mean, if we were gonna do it, I would suggest like late November,
A week
early
before
December.
Thanksgiving or something like that. Yeah, okay. All
I'm
right.
sorry too, I just brought it up because I thought one of these half days, like, in my head, I thought we had an evening and then we had a half day.
Yeah. We
so
do, but
that's-
each school does their own.
Okay,
Yeah.
so sorry that
That's
that
okay.
was
No,
brought up now.
and I truly appreciate the conversation. I think it's a healthy
Peter, I
It's
did
a
want
healthy
to
conversation.
talk to you about with the calendar, though. I know that we, as the committee, we approved a pilot program
Right.
for the professional day moving. I know there's a lot of movement, but in the end, there's a day before students start, and there's no more day after the students get out.
Right.
I know we have to approve this calendar prior to us seeing a full year cycle of it.
Right.
What I would ask is that, even if it's in August, whatever it ends up being, August, September, just feedback comes back to us, letting us know how you saw that whole cycle go, and we can, because we did not commit to keeping that if we didn't feel it was fit. So that was I know we have to go on the assumption that everything's going to work out, because we can't wait till after school gets out to approve this, but it's just something I want to put out there.
So, thank you. Two things on that. The first one is that you're exactly right, and it's so far so good, but we're not through that last end of the school yet, so I wouldn't be able to report to you
No,
on
I
that.
understand. Yeah, as I said, even August.
So the opening went well. And then maybe we could get some more discussion going or feedback going on the conference piece, though, because
Okay.
we just want to do it right. We just want to do it right for the most people possible.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And that's what I mean with, I think the best way possible is to ask the constituents, which is to ask the parents. Here we, a whole
Yeah.
committee talking about how we think it should be later, and we have a parent right here saying, actually, you know what, I think it's,
Yeah.
that's where I like it. I like to do this because A, B, and C, so.
And is it, maybe when we get to
And
that
the
point,
teachers
to
as well.
push out, like, not that we're gonna be survey happy, but like, sometimes the people who are present all the time are not representative of the whole, so it's
Right.
like, if you can be at home and answer a quick question, which month would you prefer, and then you have that information to make the best decision for all of the people.
Okay.
There's a lot to consider.
Great. Thank you, Deirdre.
I know how this committee deliberated hours and hours and hours on start times, and you try to, I hate to even say that because I know how much work went into it, and you tried to get the input of as many people as possible, and I think you made the best decision possible, but there's no perfect answer to some of these questions. There's the best answer, but there's not a perfect answer.
I agree. So we'll see March or by the April school committee meeting, though, we'll have it
Yep.
on there, so. All right. Thank you, all set.
I'm all set, yes, thank you.
Yeah. Report of the Assistant Superintendent for Business and Finance, Felicia.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My first item is the Abington Public Schools Facilities Goal Action Plan. Sorry. And the strategic objective is to provide state-of-the-art facilities in Abington. We've completed the first strategic objective, which is secure the necessary votes to construct a new school. The second strategic objective was to appropriately submit the documentation to MSBA and have it accepted, and it was as well. Begin work and complete work, and there's some additions on the fourth strategic objective, which is to continue to avail ourselves of alternative funding sources for maintenance and upgrade of school facilities. And you'll notice the bottom four are new action steps. Present and have approved by the town an MSBA green repair project to replace the roof at the Woodsdale School. This is something we have discussed previously. It's not something that needs to be done today, but it is something that we as a committee need to start thinking about. The roof is repairable right now, but it is 20+ years old, and Wendy has been a part of that discussion as well. So, second is investigate funding sources for repair and replacement of the Woodsdale parking lot. Third is to investigate funding sources for the design and installation of new playground equipment at the Woodsdale School. And the fourth action step is develop and implement a plan to ensure daily cleanliness, climate control, and general upkeep of the pre-K, middle, and high school. And that's in response to the, yes. Are there any questions on facility action?
How long does this plan last? Like, what's the timeline? Or is it just ongoing for a while? Like, I guess from the Woodsdale perspective, what's the likelihood when that, like, playground equipment would be something that we start to see small upgrades on, or?
So playground equipment is a capital item. It's very, very expensive to have a wholesale playground redone, hundreds of thousands of dollars. That does not mean that there can't be improvements made to the existing playground, and that has been a priority of the Woodsdale PTO and of the school council and of the principal to have incremental changes made for the playground. Does that?
Yeah, I was just thinking about like the indicators of accomplishment that, could it be that it's not accomplished because there's not capital to accomplish it?
That could be, but there could be, that could be, but it could also be that there's incremental steps towards it.
So it won't be done in a year.
Correct.
It won't. It might be 3, 4, or 5 years, depending on how fast those increments take place.
Okay, yeah, I was just curious, like, how long the action plan lasted before it was revised. Is it done annually?
It's reported on
Annually?
Yep.
Oh, quick question. Oh, sorry.
Yep.
Oh, about like the plan to like implement the plan to ensure daily cleanliness and climate control, like the high school and middle school. Like, so when it says like ongoing, does that mean like the problem's just been identified? Like,
It means that the solution is ongoing. So it hasn't been completed, and but it has already started. So working with the head custodian, the daily custodians, working with our chemical company to come up with some new daily routines. That's the ongoing part of it. Any other questions? School building update. The first one is that ongoing the cleanliness and climate control, and that we are continuing to work with the maintenance department, the administrators, the head custodian, and the custodians around consistent daily practices is really what it comes down to. The second update is that over vacation, we did camera and clean out that waste drain coming from the middle school office. It was in a lot better shape than it had been before. That doesn't mean that endeavor is complete. We're continuing to work with the contractor around some long-term solutions to that. Any other questions on? Okay. So my update on Chapter 70 is actually be a little more in depth than was initially anticipated. I was going to talk about the increase in Chapter 70 coming to Abington based on enrollment, but as I was planning to do that, there's been a lot of buzz around in the news around the Foundation Budget Review Committee and the state budget around education financing. So I thought I should take a few minutes to talk about that tonight. But that's why the handouts weren't in your packet, because it was kind of it was a last minute addition. But I think to me it's an important one. Yeah.
Thank you.
So in order to talk about the school funding formulas and I wanted to just talk about first what Chapter 70 is, what the foundation budget is, and then what the Foundation Budget Review Commission is and what their recommendations were around school funding. So the first part is, what is Chapter 70? Chapter 70 is the mechanism at the state level to fund public education in Massachusetts. The purpose is to assure fair, adequate, minimum per student funding by defining the foundation budget and a standard of local funding effort. Meaning, Chapter 70 plus your local funds provide an adequate level of funding, or so the state says. In 1993 was when the formula was first began, and it was part of the 1993 Educational Reform Act. And the foundation budget was how much money must be spent in a district to assure fair, adequate, minimal level of funding for students. Most districts spend more than the foundation budget each year. It does not include all funds spent on education, such as grants and transportation. And the Foundation Budget Review Commission found that Massachusetts was under-calculating by $1 billion per year the amount it costs to provide an adequate education. So, in FY15, 2014, the state budget established a Foundation Budget Review Commission. That was made up of about 40 members, ranged from legislators, educators, administrators, mass municipal employees, and there was a number of major findings that came out of the Foundation Budget Review Commission. The main ones were that healthcare and special education costs have far surpassed assumptions built into the original funding formula. The original funding formula drastically understated the resources necessary to close achievement gaps for low-income and English language learners. So, the Foundation Budget Review Commission made a number of recommendations in 2015. Those included to make adjustments to the foundation budget, including adjustments in health insurance. I'm not going to read all of these because they're there, but make adjustments in health insurance, special education costs, including funding circuit breaker, fully funding circuit breaker at 75% every year, and to include out-of-district transportation costs in that reimbursement, which it currently is not. And for some students, we've experienced this, and I know every city and town in Massachusetts has experienced this. For some students, the transportation costs as much as the tuition costs, and we're not getting a reimbursement for that. Additionally, ensure all eligible students are counted for when you talk about economically disadvantaged. Right now, the measure is using free and reduced lunch, and there's a feeling that that's not an adequate way to measure economically disadvantaged students. And the last is to increase the increment for English language learners at all grade levels. So how much is added to the formula for English language learners. Additionally, the Mass Association of School Superintendents has come out with what they believe to be, in addition to the Foundation Budget Review Commission, recommendations around funding. So that is to aggressively phase in full funding of the recommendations, increase aid for all districts, including lowering the local contribution and increasing the state contribution, and to increase accountability around that funding. That the new funding should target both intervention and innovation. So to target both students in need and also innovative educational practices for all students. So what this means for us is that in FY20, the governor's budget included something called an Act to Promote Equity and Excellence in Education. The proposed legislation sets targets for changing of the foundation budget calculation to be fully phased in by FY26, so over the next 6 years. Included in FY20's budget were incremental changes to that, to the foundation budget, with a full implementation by 2026. That's the governor's proposal, and the governor's legislation that has not been passed yet. That's something that's still being discussed at the state level. What does this mean for Abington? So you may or may not have heard, well, I'll go back to last year when we added all-day kindergarten. One of the reasons we were able to add all-day kindergarten was our analysis of an increase in Chapter 70 funding for this year to offset the cost of the all-day kindergarten program. About $450,000 it cost to run the program, we anticipated between $420,000 and $500,000 increase in Chapter 70 based on the all-day kindergarten. But you might also remember in that discussion, it wasn't just adding all-day kindergarten. We had a perfect storm of adding all-day kindergarten plus adding additional students within the district. And those two things combined brought us over a threshold to increase our Chapter 70. Either one alone wouldn't have done it. It was the two of them combined. So the initial Chapter 70 numbers came out for Abington, and it actually was an increase of over $1 million to our Chapter 70 funding, not the $500,000 that was initially anticipated. And that is a result of increased enrollment. We did our analysis last year based on October 1 numbers, and then throughout the year we increased our student population and anticipating an enrollment increase for next year, FY20. So that's the initial calculation that came out. That's good news for us and good news for the town of Abington. We've made up that deficit of the kindergarten, and now we have what we're anticipating to be the $1 million in increase to Chapter 70.
But
When we know definitively.
That was the good news.
Well, but that's all part of the town's allocation of funding from the state. So
It's not as if the school's getting $1 million.
we don't have a check for $1 million someplace.
Right,
Just
sorry.
didn't want to get
No, we do
confused
not.
about that.
So when we get funding from the state, it comes in as, there's a number of items. In the largest one being Chapter 70 funding, which is for education, and there's unrestricted local aid, there's veterans benefits, there's a whole package, and then there's an offset of charges that we get against that money. And then there's also local taxes, and that's what makes up our budget. In Abington, our budget for FY19, for example, was a little over $23 million. About $7.8 million was made up by Chapter 70. The rest was made up by taxes, the tax levy and other town income. So the Chapter 70 becomes part of the larger town budget. We're a portion of the town budget, and in some years, Chapter 70 doesn't go up that. I've never seen Chapter 70 go up this much, but Chapter 70 goes up just incrementally. There's been $20 a student, $30 a student, $50 a student, and that becomes again part of the whole town's package of funding from the state.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you have more? No, go ahead. I know if you look. I wasn't sure if you were done or not.
I am done.
Okay.
Well,
So one of the things that's coming up is in the coming weeks, I believe the committee's going to be asked if you'd sign off on a vote, a referendum sort of vote, to support changing the Chapter 70 formula. And so I also turn on the radio, and you're hearing more and more about this discussion.
Yeah.
And Felicia was going to do this piece for you next month, but it seems like with people starting to talk about it and ask about it, we wanted to at least do this. Felicia wanted to do this primer tonight, so we pushed it forward a little bit so we could start this discussion, or at least give you the information tonight so you'd had some time to think about it. And we'll be back again. And then specifically with the budget process, before we go tonight, I wanted to ask if our subcommittee, if I could get a date in the coming couple of weeks.
Okay.
Next week maybe, with you guys to talk about Business and Finance Subcommittee for FY20.
Okay.
Thanks.
and feel free if you hear things and see things and to call, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. And if in a future meeting you want more information on this, I'd also be happy to do that. So,
and I just want you to know that $1 million is I mean, it's amazing and wonderful for the town of Abington and the school department. It's for the health of this community. It's great. It's what the community needs. It's what the community deserves. I just don't want people to feel like we've got that money until we get through this budget process to know what that means, what it really means.
But it's also important to know that it's actually not the million. I mean, it's 500 of that is already.
It's already earmarked.
We've already said that.
Right. And as long as we're above net school spending, we have to go through this budget process.
Great. Thank you, Felicia.
Thank you.
Thanks.
New business established of the next school committee meeting date, March 26, 2019 at 7 p.m. here in the library. In the informational items, I just had there was a couple of things in there, some recognition for some students. I'm just going to read it really quick. Scholastic Art and Writing Awards, an annual art competition for students in grades 7 through 12 in all public, private, and parochial schools in the state. I just want to congratulate, we had 7 winners: Emily Christian, Haley Cooper, Julia Doe, Abigail Edwards, Haley McCafferty, Elizabeth Venuti, and Lydia Vidal. Also, Southeastern Massachusetts School Bandmasters Association. 9 out of the 12 students who auditioned here in our auditorium, the audition took place, were accepted. High school students: Allison McLeod, Brian Tolan, Julia Doe, Alex Guthrow, Catherine Genest, Josh Whitman, and Jared Hermanson. And middle school students: Madison Carini and Savannah Rosano. And we also had some athletes make the state tournament. 3 wrestlers: Mike Broomstein, Jesse Spinney, and Tommy Tajian. I may have messed that up. Two students compete in the indoor track state competition: Bryce Tolan and Lauren Nelligan. I also wanted to mention that last week, Bryson Andrews became the boys basketball all-time leading scorer in Abington. And finally, both the girls and boys basketball teams have qualified for the state tournament. They will both host their first round game tomorrow night, Wednesday, February 27th. The girls will be playing Fontbonne at 5:30 here, followed by the boys versus South Shore Vocational at 7:15. Best of luck to both, and best of luck to Cameron and to Lisa's son, Colby, who are both on the basketball team as well. So that was all. I don't know if you wanted to mention anything else in there. Some dates to remember: Greenway Boosters meeting in the high school at 7 p.m. on March 6th. March 7th is an in-service early release day, as well as Beaverbrook Elementary Family Community Reception Art Exhibit at Abington Public Library from 5 to 7 p.m. On Wednesday, March 13th at 6:30 is the CPAC meeting here in the high school library. Also on March 13th is the AEF meeting at Town Hall at 7 p.m. Our next school committee meeting, March 26th at 7 p.m. here. And on Thursday, March 28th, the Woodsdale School will have their Family Community Reception Art Exhibit at the library from 5 to 7 p.m. And I'll be looking for a motion to adjourn unless anybody has anything else.
Motion.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.